I was already drifting when the doctor asked me to count backward. 10, 9, 8. By the time I reached 6, the room faded into darkness. I didn't know that while I was unconscious on an operating table, my parents were making the most ruthless decision of my life. They were selling my $425,000 condo. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm not dramatic by nature. I don't exaggerate, I don't shout. But what my parents did that day wasn't a misunderstanding or a mistake. It was betrayal. Calculated, quiet, cold. The surgery was supposed to be routine, but complications came out of nowhere. I was under for hours longer than expected. Tubes, machines, beeping sounds. A foggy half-life between pain and sleep. While I was fighting to stay alive, my phone locked in a hospital drawer kept buzzing. Missed calls, unread messages, signatures forged, documents signed. My parents knew exactly what they were doing. That condo wasn't just property. It was proof. Proof that I had made it without them. I bought it 3 years earlier with my own money. No help, no co-signing, no congratulations either. When I told them I'd bought a condo, my mother smiled thinly and said, "Well, at least you won't embarrass us by renting forever." My father didn't even look up from his phone. They never asked how I afforded it. They never asked what I'd sacrificed. They just assumed it was temporary, that I would fail, that eventually, everything I owned would circle back to them. I woke up in recovery with a dry throat and a splitting headache. The nurse noticed my eyes flutter open. "You're awake." Surgery went okay. I nodded weakly. My first instinct was to reach for my phone. That's when I saw the notifications. "Urgent. Call me now. Please respond." Then one message froze my blood. From my mother. "We handled the condo situation. Don't worry." Handled? I tried to sit up. Pain shooting through my side. "What does that mean?" I whispered, though no one could hear me. My hands shook as I opened my email. There it was. A confirmation notice. Property sold. Amount: $425,000. Closing complete. The room tilted. For a moment, I honestly thought I was hallucinating from the anesthesia. They couldn't have. They wouldn't have. Then the next email loaded. Wire transfer initiated. Recipient: parent. Held joint account. Joint. Account. An account I had opened years ago when I was naive enough to think family meant protection. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared at the screen, feeling something inside me go quiet. Because when the people who raised you betray you at your weakest moment, something fundamental breaks and reforms into something colder. They came to see me that evening. My mother walked in first, face tight with concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart," she said softly. "You scared us." My father followed, hands in his pockets, calm. Too calm. I said nothing. "You shouldn't stress right now," my mother continued. "So we took care of things." I looked at them slowly. "You sold my condo," I said. My father shrugged. "It was the logical move." "Logical." "You were in surgery," he added. "What if something happened?" "We protected your assets." "Protected by draining them, by moving the money into an account I couldn't touch without them." "You can thank us later," my mother said gently. I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I understood something very clearly in that moment. They thought they had won. They thought I was vulnerable, drugged, weak, dependent. They had no idea what I owned, and more importantly, they had no idea who I had become. As they left the room, my father paused at the door. "You'll be fine," he said. "We always clean up your messes." I waited until the door closed. Then I unlocked a different app on my phone, a different account. A different property deed, one they didn't know existed. One they had never seen. One that was entirely mine. And for the first time since waking up, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because the game had just begun. The days after surgery blurred together. Painkillers dulled my body, but my mind stayed sharp. Too sharp. Every beep of the hospital monitor felt like a countdown not to recovery, but to something inevitable. Betrayal has a strange effect on clarity. It strips away emotion and leaves only truth. And the truth was simple. My parents didn't sell my condo to protect me. They sold it to control me. My father visited every evening like clockwork. Always calm, always composed. He spoke the way men do when they think they've already won. "We moved the money into a safe place," he said one night, sitting beside my bed. "Once you're fully recovered, we'll discuss next steps." Next steps, as if my life were a project he managed. My mother hovered nearby, nodding. "You shouldn't worry about finances now. Focus on healing." I smiled weakly. "I trust you," I said. That sentence tasted bitter, but I said it anyway, because silence was my strategy. They mistook my calm for defeat. Every day, they grew bolder. They talked openly in my room, assuming I was too exhausted to notice. "We should invest the money," my father said once. "Or maybe pay off our debts," my mother replied. "Or, not mine." Not even pretending. By the time I was discharged, they had already planned my future for me. "You'll stay with us for a while," my father announced, helping me into the car. "You'll need supervision." Supervision, like I was a child again. I didn't argue, because arguing would have revealed strength, and they weren't ready to see that yet. At their house, I moved slowly, carefully, playing the role they expected. Weak, grateful, dependent. They loved that version of me. It made them comfortable. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I logged into my private account. No joint access, no shared passwords, no names but mine. I reviewed documents they had never seen. The deed to my other house, a modest but beautiful place 2 states away, purchased under an LLC for privacy, paid off. They didn't know I owned it. They didn't know I had prepared for years, quietly, methodically, without their approval. Because growing up with parents like mine teaches you one thing very well: never show your full hand. A week later, my father brought out the condo sale paperwork. "We'll keep the funds for now," he said, tapping the folder. "You're not in a position to manage large sums." I looked at the papers, then back at him. "You're right," I said softly. He smiled. That smile said everything. What he didn't know was that the condo money didn't matter anymore. It hurt. Yes, it was theft, absolutely, but it wasn't the foundation of my life. They had taken what they could see. They had no idea what they couldn't. Recovery gave me time. Time to think. Time to plan. Time to remember every moment they dismissed me. Every time they said I wasn't capable. Every time they treated my achievements like accidents. One afternoon, my mother sat beside me with a cup of tea. "You're being very quiet," she said. "Are you upset with us?" I looked up, meeting her eyes. "No," I said calmly. "I'm learning." "Learning what?" I smiled faintly. "Who to trust." She laughed nervously, unsure why the room suddenly felt colder. That night, I booked a one-way flight. Not immediately. Soon. I wasn't running. I was repositioning. They thought the condo sale had broken me. They thought surgery had weakened me. They thought silence meant surrender. They were wrong. Silence was the space where I rebuilt myself stronger, smarter, and invisible. And when the time came, they wouldn't just lose money. They would lose control. Once my parents believed they had control, they stopped being careful. That's how you know someone thinks they've already won. They start talking too much. Within weeks, relatives knew about the condo. Not the full story, of course. Just my parents' version. At least we stepped in before he ruined himself. My father told my uncle over speakerphone, not bothering to lower his voice. He never had the discipline for real money. I sat across the room, pretending to scroll on my phone. My mother chimed in. "Poor Ethan. Surgery really showed us how fragile he is." Fragile. I memorized every word. They loved the sympathy. They loved being seen as saviors, parents who rescued their irresponsible son. At a family gathering, my aunt squeezed my arm and whispered, "You're lucky to have such responsible parents." I smiled politely. She had no idea. My father became bolder with the money. He talked about investments, about renovations, about our future. Never my future. One night, he sat me down at the dining table. "We're going to move part of the condo money into a long-term fund," he said. "You don't need access right now." I looked at him calmly. "Okay." He blinked. Surprised, no argument, no resistance. That was when I knew he felt invincible. Behind the scenes, I was doing the opposite of what they thought. My strength was returning. My body healed faster than they expected. Every morning, while they slept, I exercised quietly. Every afternoon, I took calls from a different room. Work calls, legal calls, real estate calls. They never asked. They never listened. They assumed dependence meant stupidity. One of those calls was with my lawyer. "Yes," I said quietly. "I want everything documented. Timeline, signatures, account transfers." He paused. "You're certain you want to proceed this way?" I looked around the house I grew up in. The walls that had heard every insult, every dismissal. "Yes," I said. "I want it clean and undeniable." My parents began pressuring me to rebuild under their supervision. "You'll need to move back permanently," my mother suggested. "You can't live alone after surgery," my father added. They wanted proximity. "Control works best when it's close." "I'll think about it," I said. Another mistake on their part. They thought hesitation meant weakness. It meant timing. The breaking point came at a dinner party. Friends of my parents, old colleagues, people who had never known me beyond their stories. My father raised a glass. "To family," he said loudly, "and to making hard decisions when others can't." Eyes turned toward me. Someone laughed awkwardly. I met his gaze across the table. He smiled confidently. That smile told me everything. He believed the narrative was permanent. Later that night, as guests left, my father stopped me in the hallway. "You should be grateful," he said. "Most parents wouldn't step in like we did." I nodded slowly. "You're right," I said. "Most wouldn't." He mistook my tone for agreement. He had no idea it was judgment. That night, I finalized my move. The house they didn't know about was ready. Utilities active, furniture delivered, documents secured, everything paid for. I wasn't escaping. I was stepping into my real life. 2 days later, my father noticed something strange. "Why are you packing?" he asked. I kept folding shirts. "I'm getting organized," I said. "For what?" I looked up at him. "You'll see." He frowned, but said nothing. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. They thought confidence was power, but confidence borrowed from control collapses the moment control disappears. And I was about to take it away quietly, publicly, and forever. The day I left, I didn't announce it. No dramatic goodbye. No confrontation. No warning. I packed my car quietly before sunrise. The sky still dark, the neighborhood asleep. Every box I carried felt lighter than the last, like I was shedding years of weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying. My parents were still asleep when I drove away, and that was fitting. They had taken everything from me while I was unconscious, so I reclaimed my life while they were. My phone started ringing an hour into the drive. I didn't answer. Another call, then another. Messages followed. "Where are you? Why is your room empty? Call us immediately." I kept driving. It wasn't until I crossed state lines that I finally pulled over and answered. My father's voice exploded through the speaker. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "You can't just disappear." "I can," I said calmly. And I did. My mother's voice cut in, sharp with panic. "Ethan, you're not well enough to be on your own." I almost laughed. "You sold my home while I was in surgery," I said. "You don't get to decide what I'm well enough for." There was a pause. Then my father scoffed. "You have nowhere to go." That's when I told them. "I'm going home," I said. "Home?" my father snapped. "You don't own anything anymore." I let the silence stretch. "Not the condo," I said. "Another house." The line went dead quiet. "What are you talking about?" my mother asked slowly. "I bought it 2 years ago," I continued. "Paid in full, under an LLC. Different state." My father laughed once. A short, dismissive sound. "You're lying." "No," I said. "You just didn't need to know." The confidence drained from his voice instantly. "Where did you get the money?" he asked. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "From the same place I got the condo money," I said. "From myself." When I arrived, the house looked exactly the way I remembered. Quiet, clean, mine. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. For the first time in my life, I locked a door knowing no one else had a key. They showed up 3 days later. I knew they would. Control hates distance. My doorbell rang in the afternoon. I opened it slowly. My father stood there, red-faced, furious. My mother looked shaken, confused, betrayed. "This is illegal!" My father snapped, stepping forward. I didn't move. "No," I said. "What you did was illegal." I handed him an envelope. Inside were copies of the documents, the forged signature, the unauthorized sale, the wire transfer to a joint account. All time-stamped, all documented, all real. His hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. "You wouldn't," he said quietly. "I already did," I replied. "You can't cut us out," my mother whispered. "We're your parents." I looked at her, not unkindly. "You stopped acting like that a long time ago." My father straightened, trying one last time. "We'll return the money," he said quickly. "We'll fix this." I shook my head. "You can't fix what you didn't break," I said. "You revealed it." That was the moment it hit them. They hadn't taken my power. They had exposed their own. Neighbors watched as they argued on my porch. Not loudly, not dramatically, but desperately. My father, the man who always controlled the room, was losing control in public for the first time. And he knew it. "You planned this," he said finally. "Yes," I answered. "When?" "Long before the surgery," I said. "I just didn't expect you to prove why I needed to." They left without another word. No apology, no resolution, just silence. The kind that follows when someone realizes they no longer matter the way they thought they did. That night, I sat alone in my living room. The lights low, the city quiet outside. I didn't feel angry. I felt finished. They had sold my $425,000 condo, thinking it would make me small. Instead, it showed me how large my life had already become without them. And tomorrow, I would decide what to do next. With the money, with the truth, with my freedom. The silence after they left felt different. Not heavy, not painful, clear. For the first time in my life, there was no one waiting to judge my choices. No one hovering to correct my decisions. No one measuring my worth against their expectations. Just me. And a house that belonged to me in every possible way. I slept better that night than I had in years. The consequences came quietly, just like everything else. A week later, my lawyer called. "They've transferred the remaining condo funds back," he said. "They're trying to avoid escalation." I wasn't surprised. Control always turns into fear when it stops working. "They also want to talk," he added. I looked around my living room's sunlight through the windows. Coffee cooling on the table. Peace everywhere. "No," I said. "They've already said everything they needed to." My parents didn't show up again. Instead, they sent messages. Long ones. Emotional ones. Carefully written ones. They spoke about misunderstanding, about stress, about family. They never spoke about consent, or trust, or the fact that they sold my home while I was unconscious. That told me all I needed to know. Months passed. The story spread, but not the way they feared. No dramatic. Not explosive. Just factual. People learned what they had done. People learned what I had built. People connected the dots, and suddenly, the narrative changed. Relatives who once praised my parents now asked quiet questions. Friends stopped treating them like heroes. And I was left alone. In the best possible way. One evening, my mother called. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. "We didn't raise you to shut us out," she said. I paused before answering. "You didn't raise me to trust you either," I replied calmly. She cried. I didn't feel guilty. Healing doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like distance. I sold nothing. Not the house. Not my peace. Not my future. The condo money, once returned, went exactly where it should have gone in the first place, into investments I controlled. No joint accounts. No shared access. No explanations. The strangest part? I didn't feel victorious in the way movies promise. No dramatic satisfaction. No moment of triumph. Just certainty. The certainty that I would never again let someone confuse access with entitlement. One afternoon, while organizing old documents, I found a photo from years ago. Me, standing in front of the condo. Proud. Hopeful. I smiled at that version of myself. He had no idea what was coming, but he trusted his instincts enough to build a second door out, quietly, patiently, invisibly. And when the first door was slammed shut in betrayal, the second one opened effortlessly. My parents thought selling my $425K condo would put me back under their control. They thought money was power. They were wrong. Power is foresight. Power is patience. Power is knowing when to stay silent and when to walk away. The last message I ever sent them was simple. I'm safe, I'm stable, and I'm done. No blame, no anger, no explanation. Because explanations are only necessary when you still seek permission. Today, when I unlock my front door, I don't just enter a house. I enter a life that belongs to me. A life built on boundaries, on truth, on self-respect. They didn't just lose access to my property, they lost access to me. And that was the one thing they never thought possible.